Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wellness of Madness podcast, except this is a new mini-series that's going to talk all about cannabis. So if you smoke cannabis or ingest cannabis or know nothing about cannabis, this is still the mini-series for you. We're going to be giving a lot of information and education. So I am Coach Lorraine, and I am a health coach, a personal trainer, a nutritionist, a behavior change specialist, and a yoga instructor. I have a diagnosis of Tourette syndrome, OCD, BPD, and general anxiety disorder. Cannabis has actually helped me out a ton, but like a lot of you guys out there, I still kind of have a stigma to it that I'm trying to get rid of, and I'm also trying to learn more. So I have an awesome person that has been teaching me so much about it, and we decided to co-host this special mini series. I'm talking about Kate JT, who is a cannabis graphic designer and an artist, and just so full of knowledge when it comes to cannabis. So without further ado, my co-host, Kate JT, everybody. Today, we are talking about rare cannabinoids. Woo! Hi, Kate. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
Good. You ready to do this?
Oh, I was born ready, girl. I was born ready.
All right, guys. So today, on today's special episode, we're going to be talking about rare cannabinoids. There's so much to talk about that we're going to actually break this down into 2 different rare cannabinoid episodes. But today, for today's episode, we're talking about 3 different ones. We're going to be talking about THC-V, CBN, and CBG. So let's get started with THC-V, also known as tetrahydrocannabivarin. So what I know about it, but we're going to hear more about it from Kate, is that it suppresses appetite, right? I know that it also is known to reduce blood sugar and strengthen bones, which is I want to know more about that. It's crazy to think about, and reduces anxiety, even though it's a sativa strain. So that's all I know. Tell us a little bit more about THC-V.
Yeah. THC-V was a really interesting experience for me when I first tried it. Have you ever had like a headband on your head way too tight before? It's kind of one of those experiences where it's like mildly euphoric, but at the same time, your head just kind of feels kind of funny, but like in a very pleasant, kind of natural way. Does that make any sense?
It does. I think I've had that kind of like where you feel, and again, all I've done is cannabis. And the first time I ever smoked cannabis, I was out of my mind. I saw colors. It was insane. And it lasted for like the first year almost. So I kind of know what you're talking about, but tell us more. I want to know more about it.
Yeah. Well, first, I think it's important to mention the fact that THC or any of the cannabinoids we're going to talk about, they interact with literally every cell in your body. That's why it's such a different experience for people. Like you just said that you saw colors for like the first year. That's crazy. You had like a psychedelic experience every time you smoked for the first year. Wow. Yeah. I've only had that happen to me maybe on 2 different occasions. And I ate like 100 milligram edible and was like tripping really hard. So anyway, back to the THC-V. It's an interesting strain, or excuse me, let me back up. It's a strain that's called, so it came from this place called Doug's Varon. It's a company out in California. They were the first ones to basically discover it, extract it, and kind of make the world know about it. There's over 100 different cannabinoids, so many of them are still just waiting to be found out there, like literally.
Hi, Kate. Oh. Sorry. Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit. Right when you started on this last point, you started breaking up. So
like internet-wise?
Yeah, a little choppy. So we'll just run it back.
I know I didn't want to interrupt. Thank you, JP. But I was like, oh no, she's giving all this good info. But let's see. Talk and see if you're good.
Am I good? Internet-wise?
Yes. I'm going to bring it back. Yes, I'm going to bring it back.
I was messing that up anyway, so we're just going to cut it.
No, it's okay. So I'm going to mention Varon, and then you can take it off from there. Okay.
Sure. Okay.
All right. So I also know that THC-V is because of Doug's Varon. Tell us a little bit about that part.
Yeah, so that was the company that was the first to, I guess, extract it, recognize it, even just have it be known. It's a company based in California. Now, since then, they've turned into a brand that almost exclusively just does high THC-V strains, tinctures, flower, vapes. So they really focus on that. And most THC-V is found in sativas, primarily from Africa. So for example, that's like red Congolese, Durban poison, Dream Queen, things like that you would think are actually pretty racy. Those actually tend to be a little more calm for me, but they give me like good energy throughout the day. I don't really smoke during the day that much anymore, but when it's like a weekend or something and you got like a sativa for a hike, those are very solid choices.
I like that because, I always struggle with, we've mentioned that sometimes when I use cannabis, I don't have motivation to do anything else. And I think it's because I smoke indica thinking that, it's going to help with my anxiety, which it does usually, but maybe something like this is better because it kind of gives you that like, I could still go do things, but it has that anxiety reduction. It's almost like, I want to compare it with caffeine and green tea. If you have caffeine and anything else, it's like, but if you have it in green tea, it has properties where it does reduce anxiety. So it's kind of like that. Before we continue on, for those people that don't know, you said it interacts with every cell on your body. And that's because of the endocannabinoid system, right? Can you give us like a quick glimpse into the endocannabinoid system and what exactly we're talking about?
Sure. The endocannabinoid system is an organ that's found in all mammals. So it's been part of our genetic history for millennia. They're basically little tiny receptors that are in your brain, your heart, your lungs. That's why when all these compounds react in your body, that's why there's so many different effects and health changes and benefits that you can get from this. It's because literally there's don't quote me on this number exactly, but there's something like 500 to 1,000 receptors in your body that we're still discovering because there's just so many. So anyway, it just interacts with every cell on a molecular level. And so it really is about homeostasis and like regulating levels within your body. So that's why you do have things like a blood sugar regulator. And we'll get to this eventually, but like some of these cannabinoids are anti-cancer compounds because they regulate homeostasis in your body so that things don't go out of whack.
Yes. And it's important to say that we're not making this up because we want you to be a stoner. I was actually shocked. I found out about the endocannabinoid system in 2020. I have a bachelor's in science. I've studied anatomy and physiology, and it was not in any of our books. It wasn't in any medical books. So trust me, I researched to be like, is this true? And then the more I researched, I was overwhelmed with the fact that we don't know about it. So the endocannabinoid is a system, whether you smoke, whether you don't smoke, whether you know anything about cannabis or never heard of it, doesn't matter. It's in your body, which is why these cannabinoids interact with every cell in your body and why we are talking about these rare ones that are not the usual that we know, right? Like THC and CBD. Everybody kind of has heard about that, but now we're talking about these.
Yeah, I heard an interesting analogy that I think for newcomers to cannabis will make it kind of easier to understand how these all work together. So I've heard that THC and CBD are like the white and black in a picture, but then the CBN, the CBG, the CBC, THCA, the CBDA, all the hundreds of compounds, those are the colors in a picture. So they all work together in concert, but the THC and CBD are like the main ones, or the light and dark if you want to. Yeah.
Got you. And you mentioned there's hundreds of cannabinoids. There's
well over
so
100.
many.
And that's just the ones that we've found. So who knows where science will be with it in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. So we're talking about the rare ones, and we're starting with 3 different ones, and we have a whole episode for the others. But let's talk a little bit more about THC-V. Anything else that is worth mentioning about this particular cannabinoid?
So I thought it was interesting that bud tenders that I used to work with would call it the diet weed. Maybe that was just like the clientele they were talking to in San Francisco, but it is known pretty well known in the industry as being an appetite suppressant. And so if you're someone like me who munches way too hard, I used to keep a THC-V tincture like in my purse and just like, I don't know, at lunch or something, I just like pop it. Or at the end of the day, if I was smoking a joint with a friend or something, pre-COVID, of course, I would just take some of that tincture, and then I wouldn't be so stony. I wouldn't be so like munching on everything. And it just worked really well for me. But but it is known for that effect. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. I wonder if there's any clinical studies done on maybe obesity or eating disorders or anything like that. We'll have to check that out.
Yeah. So anyway, that's why I love THC-V.
Wow, very interesting. I had no idea what THC-V was. And then when I started studying more about the different cannabinoids, this one was really interesting to me again because it's a sativa, but it reduces anxiety. It suppresses appetite, which, just like you said, sometimes can be a problem. Especially I have OCD, and I can have a very different relationship with food. So if I get stoned and I get really hungry, then I feel really guilty, and then I have to figure out this whole ritual behind how I'm going to eat, and it's just exhausting. So for someone with OCD, it might help out. So let's talk next about CBN, which I want to mention that THC-V is technically a psychoactive, correct?
Yeah. So it's not something you can get outside of legal markets, if anywhere outside of California, to be honest. I really don't know of any other companies that might process it that way, other than Jetty Extracts when they did their like collab with Doug Zarin. Yeah.
Ah, got it. Okay. So let's talk about CBN. CBN is a non-psychoactive, and it is cannabinol. That's its name. And all I know is that it tends to have a sedative effect. Am I wrong? Am I right? What's up with that?
So CBN is a very interesting compound. Have you ever found a really old nug of weed and tried to smoke it?
No.
Okay, good. So if you did, say it was just like sitting in your closet for a year or whatever, and then you smoked it. Basically, THC breaks down over time and it turns into CBN. So that is a degraded form of THC, and it eventually gets, when you ingest it, it's kind of the reason you get couch lock, when you're like, if you get like really indica weed and you're like really melting, like that's thanks to the CBN. But it also, when I was doing research for this, that apparently may have been overturned. So I think the jury's still kind of out, but I've had CBN like stuff, like a tea in particular. And it was, horizontal, like knocked out, couch locked. Yeah. Super couch locked.
So you think it's good for like sleep or any, people having
I think it's
sleep disorders?
Yeah. I mean, if you have trouble staying asleep, I'd say give this a whirl, because it's just going to keep you knocked out the whole night. That's why. Oh yeah, that's the tea I love. Kikoko makes amazing CBN and other cannabinoid specific teas, but that was the one that really got me interested in CBN as a compound.
I love it. So you've actually tried this one?
Oh yeah, it also tastes amazing, and it's like an anti-anxiety formulation with the chamomile and the valerian root. There's a bunch of other really good ingredients in there. It's like my jams, man. I love it.
Oh, I love valerian root too. I'm a big fan of valerian root, so check that out. And I did want to mention, even though we're going to mention this at the beginning too, that we are not trying to diagnose, nor are we trying to treat anybody. So if anyone's listening to this, please make sure to talk to your physician. Do all that stuff that you guys already know. We're just talking about it because we want to educate, and we also just want to, share it with the world, whatever has maybe worked for myself, whatever has worked for Kate, and so on. So tell me a little bit more about CBN, because I am interested in what you said about basically leaving a nug out over time. Do you think that's due to the oxygen? Is it oxidative? Like, is it just its natural ways that it just kind of breaks down?
Yeah, if I remember this correctly, basically the terpenes just degrade and get like a different form over time. They oxygenize basically, or evaporate, and it just makes it much more sedating in your system. So I'd say that's just my anecdotal, like you said, our little like legal disclaimer. This is just like my experience. You might not have that same experience because everyone's body is different and reacts differently to things. But most indica dominant strains, like the cookies, whole realm of strains, Ace of Spades is another one that's known for having a lot of CBN, and those are definitely indica heavy for sure. And they're just
so what I have. Sorry, I was going to say what I have right now is Girl Scout cookies. That's part of the cookie.
Oh yeah,
genre?
That is a very classic strain.
So that would have a little bit more CBN, and that's why it's more like chilling and sleepy.
Yeah, exactly. And when you have it in a flower form, all these cannabinoids that I'm talking about, they're in trace amounts. It's really like, if you really want to try these, it's really important to like either find an extract version or a tincture version where it's really concentrated, because on its own, you're not going to really notice much of a difference if you just, I mean, it's still there. Like there's obviously a very big difference between a very heady sativa and a very body dominant indica high. But, you know, you might not notice all these effects that we're talking about. So I recommend people to like try the more concentrated versions, because this is non-psychoactive. It's just very sedating and like very calming. It's also known as a, it's good with, wow, my brain is like not functioning. It's a very good anti-inflammation cannabinoid. So it's actually one of the ones that are being studied in clinical trials to help with like glaucoma. And, you know, there's that like running joke of like, oh, weed helps my glaucoma. Like it really does.
It actually does.
It like actually does. Yeah. It's not just a bunch of like old ladies in Florida smoking for their eyes.
So aside from its sedative effect, it seems to be anti-inflammatory as well, which is super interesting. And I like that you mentioned about like its trace amounts. It's almost like diet, right? Like if you want to have polyphenols and you're like, oh, I'm going to have broccoli, you know, you're still going to have a certain amount. If you really need to have either a bigger quantity, or in this case, just specifically those amounts, or what was I saying? Not amounts, but, you know, extracted so that
exactly.
Got it.
Yeah. So with the concentrated forms, there have been other studies that come out that have thought that, or not have thought, have
concentrated. That was the word.
Concentrated. So these concentrated forms that we're talking about, another thing that CBN is known for is the neuroprotective qualities. It has actually been shown to help rebuild neurons in a damaged neurological system. It's incredible compound. Yeah.
That is really interesting. Anything that's neuroprotective is so fascinating for me. And I mean, for everybody, because I mean, we're talking about it's a big deal here. We all know that we have these elements in our bodies, like serotonin, like endorphins. We're basically our own drug cabinet, right? If we want to, we definitely could, although it involves obviously a healthy diet, exercise, all of these different things that we have to do to be able to access it, but it's there. But the fact that we can access it also through something natural that mixes perfectly with our endocannabinoid system, it's just so awesome. Is there anything else about CBN that we should know about before we move on to our very last rare cannabinoid?
It also has antibacterial properties, which is nuts to me. Yeah, no, it's totally insane. From what I remember when I was researching for this episode, I actually didn't know that. I learned that recently. And apparently it's just like really good with helping like actually just help with infections, and like crazy to think that smoking weed could help, you know, actually do that, or like ingesting concentrate, but it is known to have that quality, and it has been like clinically researched. So I'm not just making this up.
I love it. I love that. And by the way, when you guys see this video, all of these different studies and research and journals that we have studied are going to be available to you. So that always, it's important to educate, but have to back it up. It has to be evidence-based, and it has to be scientific, because science, guys, it's about science. So let's talk about the last rare cannabinoid that we're going to talk about today, which is CBG or CBGA, which its name is cannabigerol, right? Cannabigerol?
I think so. Yeah, cannabigerol. Yeah.
Cannabigerol.
Well, let's go with that.
I think we got it. So the only thing I know is that it also is an anti-inflammatory, I believe, or can reduce inflammation, oxidative stress. Now, this is interesting for free radicals. I found this one very interesting, that it's oxidative. I knew you would. Yeah. Yes, oxidative stress. And I saw that there was a research done on Parkinson's disease in 2018. So let's talk about all of that. Let's go back to the anti-inflammatory and the oxidative stress.
Yeah, I mean, you're the health wizard over here, so I'll leave that one for you. But it does help with like really chronic diseases like high blood pressure, heart disease, and it really helps like reduce all those things. So it is kind of crazy to think like your heart can be racing with cannabis when you know, like 30 minutes after smoking for me. But in the long run, it actually helps because it regulates your system. It can help reduce all these things that you might have like from family history or just genetic predisposition too.
Oh, I'll tell you, when my heart races, when I do two things, whether I take an edible that was way too much and I see the devil and it's a horrible feeling, or I smoke and I just, for some reason, makes me more anxious and I start to freak out, and then I know everything's going to be okay, but you need to breathe and you need to calm down. So I haven't really experience, like you said, that almost 30 minutes after your heart's racing, or does it race like at the beginning and then?
It's usually like, it's like usually like 20 minutes. It's more for sativas, definitely. But yeah, like if I like smoke it, I don't know. I'm just like remembering this time in college where I was like smoking a joint with a friend on campus. And then we like walked across campus and then we were just walking like 5 miles an hour. Like I literally felt like crazy. I literally had to sit down and was like, okay, 2 joints in 1 hour is not a good combo.
Well, and it's so complex, right? Because we talk about, some people are like, okay, you know, indica is like a downer, sativa is like an upper, but then there's strains like THC-V where it's not, it actually reduces anxiety even though it's a sativa. So it's so nuanced, and it's not only about one, it's not black or white, right? There's a lot of different.
To be honest, there's no such thing as sativa or indica anymore. Everything in the market nowadays, legal or traditional, it's just so hybridized and so genetically modified that literally, like, I have seen the same strain, I think it was Gorilla Glue, at one dispensary in one form called a sativa, and then literally 3 months later in another dispensary called indica. And I was like, that's not how this works. It's not how any of this works, but it is how it works because people, because of different phenotypes too, like, so if you are, you know, growing plants and growing your own strain or something, you can basically like plot out different phenotypes of the strains, and they can literally sometimes be sativa dominant or indica dominant in the same generation, just based on phenotype. So it's such a like a crazy science because no one really like a lot of growers don't really know what they're doing. Like, and I'm not trying to like talk like bad about them, but the reality is the science just hasn't caught up to the level of hybridization that growers have like really reached in recent years. So yeah, it's so everything is just a hybrid.
Which is so important to advocate for cannabis, because in my area, like, again, I was never a smoker my whole life, and I have been now, and it's helped me so much. And I'm constantly trying to find ways to ingest it better because I get paranoid of like, oh no, my lungs, my this, you know, so I want, you know, the healthiest way to ingest it, but it has helped me. And if we don't advocate and if we don't share, then the science is not going to catch up because there's not going to be enough research. So we need to advocate so there's more research and more science involved in all of this. So we're talking about CBG, and I want to mention oxidative stress, which is, so I'm not going to go into it too much, but let's talk about aging. Sure. And let's talk about free radicals, right, in your body, which everyone fears free radicals and they go cancer. Well, you know, that I don't want to say something cures cancer because that's not the case, but oxidative stress is something real. And if we can find something that can actually benefit, help it, or even just manage the amount of free radicals that you're going to have in your body, it can not only help the aging process and all of these different things like losing moisture in your skin and just so many different aspects, or the C word, it is so beneficial. And there's so many studies on oxidative stress, and there's so many different plants and foods that can help, but it's at such a, not a small level, but yeah, there would have to be more of a concentrated form. And here we have this little endocannabinoid called CBG, CBGA, which has been shown through clinical studies that it actually aids in oxidative stress. So that is awesome. I almost want to do a whole thing on oxidative stress, which I will, maybe like a blog post so that you guys can check it out so we don't take this whole time to talk about it. But it is a very, very interesting strain. And I want to lead into the whole Parkinson's disease as well, because in 2018, there was a study that showed neuroprotection, which is what we were talking about earlier. So I have a sense that a lot of these endocannabinoids that we're finding or that we're talking about really have some form of neuroprotection, and that is huge. What do you think about that?
It helps rebuild a lot of the lipid membranes in the neurons over time. And also because, and this is like the third time I've said this in this episode, but because it does have homeostasis balancing properties, all these things, because your body knows when it's out of whack, it knows when there's like something missing. And so if it gets those compounds in your system through ingesting edibles or anything, like it will literally take that cannabinoid and rebuild that part of your neurological system, which is just absolutely fascinating to me. The oxidative stress thing is such an unknown part of science that I think a lot of people don't really talk about, because and this does relate to the anti-cancer thing I was saying, and that has been researched and is still continued to be researched today. And I really think this is kind of in concert with the anti-cancer properties because they're different compounds, but they work together to get those same effects. So I think CBG and other anti-cancer ones that we'll go into the next episode, they all work together. And that's why people talk about the entourage effect, and all these cannabinoids in concert with each other have a vast number of medical benefits that you wouldn't get on their own if you had just smoked THC or like, you know, a CBD isolate or something. And so that's the shame that people think like, oh, well, let me just take this one thing and I'll like be magically fine. It's like, no, you actually need the whole thing together, and it's a complete package to get these benefits.
Yes. And you're absolutely right. And if anyone's listening out there, that's something that I'm constantly stressing just in life in general. We're not saying, hey, just be super stoned the whole time and you're going to be healthy. Just like when you want to get resveratrol, you're like, oh, hey, I'm just going to pound wine every day, or, you know, anything that you need to do. There has to be a balance in life, right? So you have to have a nice, nutritious diet. You have to move. There has to be exercise. You have to work on recovery, on mobility, on stability, on all of these different things. And I know that as adults, it might be overwhelming because maybe as children, we weren't raised to understand that life was going to be this balance of a lot of things that we had to do. But in all honesty, it's not that difficult if we start building healthy habits and we start really creating that form of balance in our life. It's going to be hard at first. It always is, guys. It's always going to be hard, but it's going to get easier as time goes on. But Kate's absolutely right. Just like in the cannabis world, you want to get not just one thing, and it's also not a magic potion that's going to make it all go away. Genetics has a lot to you know, a big part in all of this. But if we can help our genes, we can't change our genes, but if we can help them with diet, with exercise, with, in this case, a lot of people, maybe some supplementation with endocannabinoids or cannabis in general, that's the way to go, everyone.
Yeah.
Balance.
Absolutely. And the best thing about this is if you are interested in CBG for, you know, any particular ailment you might have, most of it in extract form comes from hemp. So because legally, now that the Farm Bill has passed, you can't have more than 0.03% THC in any hemp product, but you can get them in all 50 states now. So that is good. But they basically have to distill them down really, really intensely to get them concentrated enough where you can, you know, have a decent effect from the CBG or THC-V or whatever, but they also have to pull out the THC. So if you are getting this in hemp form, just be aware you might want to supplement it with other means to get the full effect. Because I always thought that was interesting. I haven't really played around with hemp supplements all that much, but I have seen a lot of promise with them with industry folks of mine. And it seems like there's a lot of growing left to do in that part of the industry for sure. I'm sure that in the next couple of years we're going to see hemp supplements everywhere with every cannabinoid, you know, every variation, every combination. Like people are going to go crazy with the research and trying to figure out which ones work best together, because I'm telling you there's so many things we don't know about this that in 2 years this podcast might be completely out of date. You know, like that's the crazy thing. We're learning so much more every day.
And that's what I love about science. That's the beauty of it. People get frustrated. And it's like, no, that's what we want. If you're in academics or in science, you want to be disproven. You want to find something and then find something to disprove it, you know? So it is really exciting to find out new things, to research, to advocate, and just to be on top of it. So today we talked about THC-V, we talked about CBN, and we talked about CBG. Can you give us a little glimpse on the next three cannabinoids that we're going to be talking about in the next episode?
Yeah, they're some of my favorites too. They are Delta-8 THC, CBC, and CBDA and THCA, if we have time to cover all four.
Oh. And if you guys are watching, leave your comments below if there's anything that you found interesting. Is there any endocannabinoid that you want to know more about, or that you might have information to teach us about? Please leave your comments and contact us and let us know what's up, because we're interested. If you guys would like, you guys can find me on Instagram on with_folk_lore. There it is up on the banner. And you can find Miss Kate at, I'm going to bring it up because I don't know it by memory, Canis Australis. There it is. But till next time, guys, thank you so much for joining us on this mini series on the Wellness of Madness, talking about all about cannabis. And today we spoke about the rare endocannabinoids. Next episode, we're going to talk about 3 more. This was my co-host, Kate JT. Anything that you want to say before we get out of here?
This was a rad time, and I can't wait for next week.
Yes, and then hopefully we might have something special going on Twitch where we might play some games and answer some questions. That's coming up. Stay tuned. And thank you everyone for listening and hanging out with us. Don't forget to do your research, to be involved, and continue to advocate for cannabis. Thank you guys. See you next time.
Science is real.
Science is real. Please, science first. All right, guys, I'm Lorraine. See you next time, everybody.